Why did you decide to become a vegan as opposed to a vegetarian?
Mainly because everything that applies to the killing of an animal,
Hmm.
with respect to pain and suffering,
Yeah,
applies just as much to dairy products or, eggs, for example.
I love
Um,
eggs.
there are there are some exceptions to
Yeah.
that, but in terms of the mass production, meaning in order to serve the demand that
Hmm.
is required for dairy and eggs,
Yeah.
um, the argument applies just as much. So again, in order to be philosophically consistent, if
Hmm.
you care about causing pain and suffering,
Yeah.
and there is an alternative available, or you don't require this product in order to survive or thrive,
Hmm.
then obviously you can't be involved in that. And the argument also comes from the point of view of less suffering is better than more suffering. So
Hmm.
vegetarianism, for example, is better because there's lots of pigs and cows and stuff that are not going to have their throat slit, or however you want to say it.
But they're still
Um, but
enslaved.
but veganism is better because it's less suffering than
Hmm.
vegetarianism.
So it
And
occurred to me that that's it. I mean, animals in a farm, in a way, you could say that farming was one of the most important factors in terms of, human culture, in terms of enabling us to feed cities and have cities grow up in the ancient times, and to support a large, stable population that doesn't have to sort of meander and wander off and like a nomad. So farming methods have been incredibly important to us. But in a
mm,
way, farming is, when it comes to animal farming, is about enslaving animals and bending them to our will, right? So at the moment, I think I heard there's about 1.5 billion cows in the world, and you could argue that those cows are only here because of us, because we are, well, supporting them, and a lot of those cows are
mm,
used for meat. Okay, that's fine for steaks and stuff like this. And if we got rid of, so if we all became vegetarians, then we wouldn't have the requirement for so many cows. But then we would still have a lot of them. Who these cows would, we'd look after them, and they would produce milk and cheese and things like this for us, whether they like it or not. But from my perspective, that's a bit like the capitalist system, right? Because they would be, every you have to pull your weight, and you have to, you contribute somehow to society. And I utterly agree with the idea that he shouldn't be slaughtered. I find it abhorrent, abhorrent to think that you've got these animals, the thought of looking after an animal and raising it and giving it food and giving it injections to make sure it doesn't get any horrible disease and everything. You win the animals. I guess the animal comes around to trust you, and then when you've gained the animal's trust and it's fat enough, then you take it off and cut its throat and eat its meat. I think that's absolutely disgusting, that kind of philosophy. And yet I still eat meat because I don't often think about it. Right now I'm thinking about it, and it kind of makes me feel a little ashamed. But vegetarians wouldn't do that, though, would they? They'd be looking after the animals, right? And the animals would be producing products. They wouldn't suffer necessarily, right?
it depends. So a couple of things there, in terms of like the difference between why we're able to this disconnect, which you mentioned a couple of times,
Mm.
and there are a couple of reasons why the disconnect happens. Some are based on lack of facial expressions, and this all
Mm.
comes down to how much are they like us.
Right.
So if they're not like us very much, then we're quite happy doing things to them that we would never do to other members
Yeah.
of our own species.
Yeah.
Some of it is down to size. So if they're much smaller, we're less outraged by things.
That's true.
And facial expressions and size. It's not a logical thing to say, okay, that makes it okay to kill them, for example. And then also the sounds that they make. So this is the reason why people don't see any problem with killing fish, is because they don't have anywhere near the facial expressions that we do. They're quite small, generally speaking, and they can't make any sounds if they're, as they're, pulled out of the water with a hook through their mouth, for example. The other thing
lobsters scream, don't they, when you throw them into boiling hot water? Is that right? Or I don't eat seafood, funnily enough.
I'm not certain that's the case. I'm not sure. I've heard something which says that if they did scream every time they were thrown into boiling water, then it wouldn't be done as often. But I don't know about that. With respect to milk and cows, the reality of that industry is pretty, at least the mass-produced stuff is pretty horrific. And the reason is there are many of them, but it starts with cows only produce milk when they're pregnant, or after they've been pregnant, rather, when they've given birth.
Right. So
in order for them to continually be giving milk, they need to be continually impregnated, and they don't arrange a special night with a bull. That involves a fist or a pole with bull semen.
Oh yeah, nasty.
And then when they actually give birth, they have this connection with the calf or whatever it's called, and the calf is taken away from them, and you hear visible screams about the fact that their child, who they just gave birth to, is being taken away. If it's a male, then that's veal, so they'll have their throat slit, and that dairy industry supports the veal industry, basically.
So they're interlinked,
yeah. And the milk that is supposed to be for that veal is then consumed by humans, and they can't be moving around when you want them to give milk, or when you take the milk. So they have to be confined to a certain space for as long as they can be.
Right,
and
so
then
it's a bit barbaric,
that process repeats, basically. And for up to weeks after, they show visible signs of depression about the fact that they've lost their child. And this happens over and over again.
Yeah, that's
so you
pretty
could,
horrific
in theory,
when you think about it,
say that the milk is worse than just killing them one time and eating the meat, but that's debatable in a way.
That is pretty horrible, actually, when you point it out. I hadn't really considered that. I mean,